Hey guys, what is up? I'm Nikki and welcome back to my channel where I talk about literally whatever I want. I'm trying a new video format, so let me know if you like this style more than my previous videos. But without further ado, let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about two different cases involving UFOs. And I had never heard of these cases before, but as I kept learning, it kind of got crazier and crazier. And I could go back and forth all day on just the logistic of these cases. So, the first one we're going to be talking about is the celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg in 1561. So let me paint a picture for you. It's the early morning of April 14th, 1561, and you're living in the bustling city of Nuremberg, Germany. You get up, maybe you make yourself a cup of coffee. You sit down to enjoy your morning and read something frightening in the newspaper. It reads, quote, "In the morning of April 14th, 1561, at daybreak, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun. At first, there appeared in the middle of the sun two blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. And in the sun, above and below and on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partly dull, partly black, ferrous color." So I don't know about you guys, but that sounds terrifying. So let's back up. The people of Nuremberg thought they saw an aerial battle between different shapes on this day in April. The text mentions several spheres, cylinders, and crosses all across the sky battling each other. And this event lasted about an hour according to the text, and eventually the spheres fell to the earth. And you might be quick to assume this is all a hoax, but what if I told you this happened again? 3 more times, as a matter of fact. Yes, in 1566, a similar event happened over the Swiss city of Basel in July 27th, 28th, and then again on August 7th. And these events took place sunrise or sunset. It didn't really keep consistency. A Swiss broadtext from the time read, quote, "The sun had shone warm on the clear bright skies, and then around 9 p.m. it suddenly took a different shape and color. First, the sun lost all its radiance and luster, and it was no bigger than the full moon, and finally it seemed to weep tears of blood, and the air behind him went dark. And he was seen by all the people of the city and countryside. In much the same way also the moon, which has already been almost full and has shone through the night, assumed an almost blood-red color in the sky. The next day, Sunday, the sun rose at about 6 o'clock and slept with the same appearance it had when it was lying before. He lit the houses, streets, and around as if everything was blood-red and fiery. At the dawn of August 7th, we saw large black spheres coming and going with great speed and precipitation before the sun and chattering as if they had led a fight. Many of them were fiery red and soon crumbled and then extinguished." End quote. And so I wanted to read you guys that entire broad text quote just to make sure that you kind of captured this entire vibe of like panicking. I don't know about you guys, but that sounded horrifying to me. Can you imagine seeing some random shapes just like whizzing around in the sky while the sun and the moon were changing colors? I'd be pretty confused and probably freaking out a little too. So both events sound pretty similar, right? And it would be less likely that many civilians and journalists from the time made each event up. So if we aren't chalking all of these events up to a hoax, what could explain these strange events in the sky? Let's walk through some theories. Aliens. Many people seem to think aliens were behind both events. Could the various shapes in the sky have been other beings from a different planet fighting for unknown reasons? I don't believe this theory because the spheres that supposedly fell to the ground in Nuremberg were never recovered, and there's no record of anyone finding them. Personally, I don't really believe this one because there's not really that much of a solid argument for it. Ergotism. Some people speculate that these phenomena were caused by ergotism or mass hysteria. So ergotism is caused by a fungus that infects rye or other grains. So if you eat the rye or grains that have been infected, you can kind of have these weird symptoms like seizures, psychosis, nausea, vomiting, and gangrene. So since psychosis is included in the symptoms list, many people theorize that a batch of infected crops could have led to mass hysteria and psychosis. I don't really buy this one because the symptoms only lasted for a day in the Nuremberg case, and in the case of Basel, it was about 2 weeks. So it would have made more sense for Basel, as a contaminated crop supply could have lasted the inhabitants a couple of weeks. The sundog theory. Many people have been quick to point out that a sundog or perihelion could have caused the panic in these cities. A sundog is an optical phenomenon that shows a bright spot on one or both sides of the sun. This illusion is caused by light refracting sunlight via ice crystals in the atmosphere, and so the end product is kind of a halo effect around the sun. And this phenomenon can happen during any season, but it can be seen best when the sun is near the horizon. So think dusk or dawn. I've seen some pictures of the illustrations from the 16th century and modern day pictures that kind of compare side to side both of these phenomenon, and I'll insert them here for you to look at. A lot of these side-by-side comparisons are really convincing. Additionally, the broad text makes it look like all of these phenomenon were happening all at once, flying around the sky all crazy, right? But the author of the broad text for the Nuremberg case wrote in the description that this all had happened over the course of an hour. So since he only had one big picture to show off, he might have compiled everything he saw into one illustration. We don't even know if Hans Glaser, the illustrator of the Nuremberg broad text, witnessed the events for himself, or if he was hearing this through witness accounts, or if it was just through word of mouth. And the same could have been said for the illustrators and writers for the Basel case. While all this might make sense, it doesn't really explain why the civilians of Basel witnessed similar phenomenon multiple times within a short period of time, and they saw the moon as blood red. I took the liberty of looking up when lunar eclipses had happened around this time, and none of them really lined up with the dates that were given for the Basel case. So I really don't think that this was a lunar eclipse, which sometimes shows the moon as red. The people of Basel also saw black spheres moving around, and none of this really explains the noises they heard either. While some of this can explain some of the optical illusions that the people in Basel saw, none of this explains the noises that they heard. While sundogs and similar atmospheric phenomenon refract light to show an optical illusion, none of this would cause strange noises. This theory was by far one of the more plausible ones, but I'm not fully convinced, because, like I said, none of this accounts for the quote-unquote chattering that the people in Basel heard. So, overall, I'm not convinced. And our last theory, it was all a hoax. No debris was ever found, even though the broad text for Nuremberg depicted one or more of the objects crashing into the ground. Many people think that the Nuremberg case was complete propaganda by Hans Glaser, as his reputation was pretty questionable. He was reprimanded for illegally printing some of his work from unauthorized printers in Nuremberg, and 13 years later after this whole incident, he was even banned from publishing any articles about Cyprus. Glaser in particular seemed to exaggerate the truth many times to sensationalize his headlines and sell more copies of his work. Although I cannot really judge him for that, because people nowadays do that too. He's got to get his bag. Although his work did have some inkling of truth, a lot of the time when he reported on other strange things, there was a little bit of truth behind it. For example, he reported on phenomena like blood rain and bearded grapes, all of which are true things. So, that is all I have for you guys. Please let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your theories, if you agree on what I had to theorize, if you don't, or if you have another topic that you'd like me to talk about next. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!